I'm just hi all on YouTube and Play Chess, so streaming both to YouTube and Play Chess. Notes, I'm about 9:05 because of TV. Hobby City is really dramatic on Tuesdays, so it's 9:05 generally. Okay. Alright, so yeah, I thought this week we could have a look at the final, which turned out to be super dramatic.
God is speaking to me.
What is God?
Oh, I have to mute that bit. I don't know why that wasn't muted. How strange. That doesn't usually happen. Okay, I hope the visuals are okay on YouTube. By the way, hope visuals are okay. Board's okay, is it? Coordinate to there. On my preview it seems okay. Alright, so as many of you have seen, hopefully on the YouTube channel, I did have a look at all 4 of the classical encounters. So it was 2-0 up to Peter Svidler, and then by some miracle Sergey Karjakin equalled the score on the classical. So then they went into the tie-break, and I think the first 2 tie-break games, from memory, were they not 30 minutes each with 10-second increments? What, okay, I'm going to ask that question. Was it 30 minutes with 10-second increments? I think it was. Yeah, the first 2 games. Does anyone know any better? I can, if you check the official website, I think it's something like that. So the first 2 games you'd expect much higher quality than the rest, because I think then it was going on to like 10 minutes each with 5 seconds increments. Okay, I can get the rules if you want from the official site, but unless anyone knows offhand, I hope that's good enough to start checking out the first 2 games. So around 7.5. So if you make sure you know the structure of this, they've tied the 4-game classical match 2-2, so it's forced into a tie-break situation. Okay, and this first game 7.5, 30 minutes each, I think, with 10-second increment, unless anyone wants to correct that. Oh, alright, thank you. Then it was, in the next 2 games, if it carries on, it will be 10 minutes with 5-second increments, then 5 minutes with 3-second increments, and then Armageddon. Fantastic. Great, we've got time control sorted out. So, here we go. So, round 7.5, Sergey Karjakin was playing white against Peter Svidler. So, we have this move, Nf3 Nf6, and symmetrical English E3. This is quite popular. Let's play for D4. Why not? G6, D4, CD, and black plays D5. C takes, knight takes. Got a bit of a Grunfeld defense feel to it. And Peter Svidler, of course, is an expert in the Grunfeld defense. I'm not sure how much I want to turn an engine on here at the moment. Shall we just talk about the position? Pressure on D5, Queen B3. It's mounted with Bishop C4, so black plays E6, slightly weakening the dark squares, supporting light on D5. Bishop G5, now black plays check, and we have slight repetition, and now white breaks the repetition with knight C3. So knight takes, B takes. Is this position a live book? I'll just check. Not really. Apparently they've gone away from book already. Alright, just for those interested, how did that happen? Hold on a sec. We were in live book with 119 games here. This was slightly unusual. Usually it was knight c3 in this position, by the way, 189. So it sort of ventured away from book, and usually bishop g7 here. Instead knight takes d5. Usually knight c3 here. So we get this unusual sequence where we're out of live book actually already. complete. There's no lie, but unless it transposes back into it soon. Bishop G5, F6. No, we're in a kind of new position here. Oh, sorry. Let's look at the game actually. So check, Queen D8, Bishop G5. This is a new position. Knight C3, Knight takes, B takes, Knight C6. Right, so both sides castle. And we have Bishop H4. Okay, so Queen C7, and now it looks as though Knight A5 is threatened because of Queen C7, yeah? So actually, White doesn't give Black chance to do that. Bishop G3, Queen D8. And now the Queen sidesteps this anyway with Queen A3, putting pressure on the diagonal. We have B6. What moves here? As though D5 might be an issue for Black. Knight A5. The bishop drops back. Bishop B7 controlling D5. So it looks fairly logical. Black's position actually looks quite comfortable. I think I will get an engine evaluation here. To me it looks as though it should be okay. It's a small advantage for White only. Knight E5. We have Rook C8. Nice backward pawn to torture. Knight's kicked. Queen D5. Putting the knight a bit to G2. Bishop F1. We have Bishop H6 hitting the rook. And Black is actually enjoying this position a bit more now. Black is in the driving seat here. After Queen D7, what is threatened? Maybe Knight C4 is on the cards. Maybe. H3. Bishop D5 though, protecting this pawn. Oh. So really Knight C4 is on the cards now. Why not sit in front of that backward pawn? Bishop A6, Bishop B7. Now it's played Knight C4, even if I don't think this pawn could be taken anyway. So Black is actually getting a positional advantage here. He's got that bishop pair. So Peter Svidler's doing very well here. In fact, this pawn is taken. Apparently it is possible without losing the queen. The queen can escape. B5. But the thing is, Black's potentially going to get his pawn back with the bishop pair. So it doesn't matter. Already, in fact, B4 might be threatened to wreck White's position a little bit, the structure in the center. So we see Knight E1, maybe trying to sort of play like this, potentially. Well, not Knight D, well, maybe Knight D3, it is supported. I was wondering about this pin, yeah, to sort of compensate for B4 here. So on B4, I think, actually it also protects the rook, so C takes is possible. So that does parry B4. We have Rook F8. So Black's going to get this pressure on the A file, and he'll still have the bishop pair. So Black should be doing fine. And Peter Svidler's a nice guy, from all accounts. So I don't know. Most people, maybe many people, were cheering for Peter Svidler to sort of do well here. I'm sure Sergey Karjakin is a nice guy as well. So maybe, okay, forget the bias, but Black looks to be better here. A2's like dropping off. Black's position seems very nice, very coordinated with the bishop at this point. Do we all agree? Do we all agree? Black looks great, yeah? All agree? All agree, rather. Black looks great here. He's a pawn down, he's going to get it back with interest, yeah? Anyone disagree? I'll give you 20 seconds if we get a response. Poll response, some sort of poll response. I think Black looks great, and we've got a long way in this game to go, so I'm not going to spend too long over the moves because it's a massive, gigantic game, unfortunately. Yeah, that's a slight concern, but remember Black's got the bishop and that light square bishop should be able to look after B5. So Knight D3. Okay, Knight C5 could be annoying, that's parried. Okay, this pawn is not going anywhere. So we're covering this C5 square. Okay. Stubbornly defending. Well, yes, queen c6, but now he's on g2. That's protected, but the cost of that is the dark square weaknesses. Bishop c4, and now maybe actually bishop h6 is annoying. You know, hitting this rook, it's going to be annoying. Something's going to drop here. a2 is going to drop, isn't it? Bishop f4, stopping bishop h6, it seems. Queen d5, and now bishop takes d3, and queen f5, double attacking d3, and f4 is threatened, it seems. Knight f2, and that does drop, of course, a2 now. But there's four things. There's two double batteries, one here on a2. a2 is collected now by force. Rook takes a2. Takes. Queen e1. So black has got his pawn back and kind of sits on the position very comfortably with the bishop pair. Knight g4. There is a mild threat. Well, it has to be parried. Knight takes f6. Not a mild threat, a severe threat of knight takes f6. Forking queen and king. It's parried. Perhaps best to parry this. You've got a choice of parrying it. A sensible way might be bishop g7 or queen d8. Maybe a little bit risky is what was played actually. Queen f5. The problem with the queen protecting the pawn, the queen might be subject to attack at some point, and f6 might drop somehow tactically. And after queen e4, immediately we get that implication. If takes, actually knight takes f6, check, and then take back the queen. So queen a1, sorry, rook a1. So white is actually threatening now just to take on f5 and take this pawn. And this position is still a chance. Remember, it's rapid chess, so this is not grandmasters at full strength, right? Black has a chance here, it seems, technically, to defend the pawn with bishop g7. I don't think he's losing any pawn here. Black's not losing any pawn. This is the important thing. But the way he plays it now, it's a blunder, it seems, of some sort. h5. He loses f6 because white just takes on f5 and then takes on f6 with check, and the knight's got an escape square. So white goes a pawn up again. It's unfortunate, but that's chess for you. It's rapid chess. Yeah. So okay, white is again a pawn up. Black still has the bishop pair, but white tries to get rid of the bishop pair now. Locks down the position. Whoa! Pardon me. Locks down the position with f4. We have rook a2. Okay. King g3. Bishop c7, and actually black is getting a bit tortured now, unfortunately, because that knight on e5 is pretty fantastic. So the white king is trying to infiltrate on the dark squares without getting mated. Bishop takes e5, getting rid of that monster knight, and it looks as though black should hold this. It's opposite colour bishops. Okay, so we have this king is trying to get round, like round over here somehow. And the king's making its way round the queen side, and there's a critical position I want to show you where the king can't go to c8, right? Because if the king like goes over here and starts harassing these pawns, if he gets this pawn, then these two pawns are falling, so that has to be avoided. It's still, the undermining properties still hold that if you undermine at the base of the pawn chain, basically even with your king, these two are going to be vulnerable. So we can't let the king do this. There's a critical position here, bishop g5, where black might have been able to set up a fortress, it seems, tactically. Or is it later? There's points where f4 might be worth considering just to set up a fortress, because if we have this position, we've got a nice blockade on all three pawns, and that's impenetrable. Well, at least visually it's impenetrable. Okay, But the last thing we want is this king coming over here to get this pawn. We have bishop e6, bishop h6, bishop d7, bishop f4, bishop e6, as though nothing's happening for a moment. Unfortunately, hang on a sec, there might be better. I mean, you see, this pawn is blocked, right, with this move bishop f4 and move 79. So if that fortress idea, it could have been used there, but it wasn't. And what we get now is a very strong move from white after this bishop e6. Can you see white's play at move 79? And you're basically trying to break this fortress. How would you do it? So, sorry, move 80. What would be your killer move at move 80? Sergey Karjakin is playing white, by the way. Peter Svidler playing black. What does white play here to break the fortress? Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's sickening. I mean, am I using the wrong adjectives? I mean, sickening from before. He had a crushing position. He had the bishop pair. Yeah, he got his pawn back. He just needed to not lose the pawn. Yeah, okay. So d5 check was played. And unfortunately, whatever way this is taken, a gap is left for the king to infiltrate. You know, if we take like this, the king goes over here, and this might be tricky to draw now. I mean, this position here, if the king gets over there, right, as this is an example, remember these pawns are going to drop, right, and we're going to, you know, get loads of passed pawns. The chances are with white now, maybe, you know, this continuation is virtually winning. Okay, but that's just a variation. But anyway, so bishop takes d5, king c8, bishop b3, king d8. We have bishop c4. So I mentioned king d5 there for some reason in a variation, but actually, yeah, this happened in the game. Sorry, d5 check, bishop takes d5 was played. So if king takes d5, king c7, and the king's like walking on these dark squares, king c4, king d6, and actually this pawn is dangerous, e6. So this would be pretty much, this is a winning position here, because the king's stopping f7. Play this, queening first, or actually check, taking that and then queening. So it seems at this move, at this juncture of d5 check, black seems to be on a losing path. Okay, he took here, we have this continuation. Already this is tricky. So king e7, bishop b3, now e6. Okay, so with the idea of king here, potentially, so bishop c4, king f6, and the bishop stopping the king coming there to blockade rescue at the moment. Bishop b3, bishop c1, bishop c4, bishop a3, now this e7, king d7. Okay, so that pawn's protected by the bishop, and this pawn's not going anywhere. Now king takes g6, and you know, black's losing too many pawns. So at move 89, black resigned. Okay, so that was a difficult game to play and take for Peter Svidler, because he had a great position earlier. Alright, so okay, so that was 7.5. So yeah, in a nutshell, I'm not going to go over it again. Black seemed to have a very decent position, although it was a pawn down temporarily. He gained up on a2, he got a2 back, got his pawn back, blundered f6. White played a fantastic move at move 80 to break through the blockade and get an ideal position where he's undermining that pawn chain on the king side. Okay, let's look at the next game. So basically this was a must-win for Peter Svidler in the mini 30-minute match. So we're talking 30 minutes, 10-second increment, yeah? So Peter Svidler playing white in round 7.6. Knight f3, knight f6. We have g3, a King's Engine attack here, because you can tell that because of this d3. It's like reverse King's Engine defense, as distinct from, say, other openings. So Fischer used to like this a lot in his youth. So white's playing now more normally than in their classical game encounter where we saw e takes. White plays more normally. The move e5 is normally played. We've got over 400 games in Livebook with e5. That's basically one of the main ideas here, that you make e5 a strong point of the position. That's how Fischer used to play it. Make e5 a strong point, then carry out some sort of dark square attack. Usually, Fischer used to play like stuff like this and often win games like that. So it's a very, very nice opening to play as white, especially on fast time controls with a ready-made sort of plan. Black plays on the queen side, pardon me. Black plays on the queen side, b4, you have h4, knight 1, h2. It's pretty standard stuff. Maybe Peter Svidler studied Fischer, but Fischer used to play this in loads of games. So h6, knight g4, bishop f8, bishop f4, that strong point tries to reduce black's counterplay to, well, it sort of, what does it do to black? It seems to give white almost sacrificial opportunities on the king side. But anyway, black carries on the queen side, a3 stopping these pawns before they do some structural damage, knight e3. And now actually fixing on the queen side is mixing, like, it's not really going, there's nothing really to sacrifice, so he's actually fixing these pawns a4 and c5 here positionally, taking time out positionally. Knight takes, and now he actually snaps off a4, so he's playing actually a bit on the queen side. He's a pawn up, and pressure on the queen side is nice. Still strong point of e5. Now this knight goes to a lovely square, the e4 square potentially. Black plays that, that's taken, and this pawn might be weak in the future. The bishops come off, but remember there's this lovely knight on e4 against the bishop now. Now black gets his pawn back, but look at this position. Who do you think's better here? I know who I prefer white. Okay, who do you prefer here? Now, as I say, I mean, I think lesser players would try sacking on the king side or something as a result of the opening, but he played on both sides of the board, and he's got what I think is like strategically great position here. The knight is better than the bishop, so I'm hoping most of you think white's better, because actually, the bishop's kind of hemmed in, and potentially hemmed in with this pawn as well. This pawn's potentially weak. Well, who do you think's white? Who do you think's better here? How's your evaluation functions? White, yeah. He's got that very comfortable knight. So we have queen a6, rook b3. Now protecting d3 means the queen's actually free to sort of come to c7. Queen a5, f4. Okay, so that was protecting c7, that entry point. But here queen b1. It's gonna stick a rook there, maybe on b7. Harasses the queen. King comes to f3. That's interesting. Sort of prophylaxis move. Very interesting move. Maybe if we just do this, it's a disaster. There isn't a particular disaster, but okay, so this is a nice waiting move anyway. King f3, rook a3, rook b8, rook a8, and now a nice simplifying move, queen b7, which forces the queens off, makes things clearer. And the thing is, black is condemned to passivity here, it seems. because as soon as he moves the rook, there's going to be a pin on the bishop, which is really nasty. Black can't really play g6 either. If he plays g6, we just take here and we're sort of mating black like this. So black's condemned to nothingness here, no counterplay. He does try rook a3, and he basically loses the bishop, because the bishop, as well as being pinned, the knight's got access to d7 potentially. Sidesteps king e2 because, you know, rook e3, right? So the king goes there to f2. So but now white is threatening knight c5, knight d7 to win that bishop. And what can black do about it? Not much, in fact. But you might think, well, hang on, defend d7. Defend d7? Let's have a quick look. Yeah, knight c5 here. Actually, white has a winning move in this position. White's play here, this is a variation. White's play here. This is a variation. What does white play here which actually wins? Can you see? There's a winning move in this position. Maybe important to note to understand the game continuation. Anyone? Any ideas? Yeah? Someone's posted one. Okay, on stream. Alright. Rook d8. It supports knight d7, yeah? That'll be winning. So actually Sergey, he doesn't bother with that. He actually plays g6. And probably technically best might be, in the light of g6, to change course here. Apparently this is really good technically, because now the king can't take because the rook takes, the pawn can't take because of check here, mating, basically, unless you want to give up the bishop. But one of the real-time commentators mentioned he couldn't see what happens after something like check. Let's have a quick look at this. Rook a2, and he was wondering what white does here, which is a good question. What does white do? Because if white plays g takes, then that solves a lot of black's problems, right? Actually, white has got a killer move in this position, which makes this variation strong, it seems. Can you see what white's killer move? Is that a worthwhile question? Might be. I'm going to show you. G4 apparently is crushing in this position. So say like this. We can do that. I mean, it's what is black actually doing after G4? Because I think the point is it supports also knight h5. So if here knight h5, we're winning material. I think we've got g7 here, yeah. All right, so that would have been crushing anyway, but that's computers for you. Now the easy way is just to go and munch the bishop, right? Which is what was played. Knight c5. Let's just go and munch the bishop as originally planned. Yeah. All right, so check, but there's a surprising twist here. Black plays rook b2. He'd rather lose the exchange, so he's sacking his rook just to be the exchange down. Very clever. It's still lost because the king's potentially cut off on the 7th rank. and this pawn is easily blockaded. It's actually given away here. It's lost whatever happens. By giving it away, there's possibilities of winning this pawn, and ideally other pawns. Possibilities like h4 here, maybe one day, but it's attacked. Rook f3, it's attacked again, and the king makes its way to d7. King c6. We have rook b3. We're going to kick the king back. Check. The king comes here. Doesn't matter about these two. In particular, it doesn't matter about this one, because after taking here, white just plays king takes e6, and white's completely winning this position because king f6 is coming with this big passed pawn. Black took here, which just loses to rook f7 check, losing the bishop. That was the end of that. So, interesting use of the King's Engine attack. That was a fantastic use of the King's Engine attack system by Peter Svidler. A modern dynamic treatment on both sides of the board, winning a pawn, letting it go later, just to establish a fantastic knight on e4 against a passive bishop on f8. So getting a strategically won position. Maybe many of us would have tried for some kingside hack attack with that time control, but it wasn't needed. Just calm play on both sides of the board and getting a winning endgame scenario. So that was 7.6, round 7.6. So they've drawn their 4 first classical games. Yeah, now they've drawn the 30 minutes plus 10-second increment games, 1 all, but actually no draws, all the time decisive games. So next on this fun day was 2 games of 10 minutes each, and someone mentioned time short earlier, was it 5-second increment? I think 5-second increment someone mentioned. So around 7.7, so it's 10 minutes each with 5-second increment. Sergey Karjakin playing white against Peter Svidler. So knight f3, knight f6, c4, c5. We have e3, g6, d4, bishop g7, d5, castles, knight c3, d6, h3, e6, bishop e2, rook e8. It looks as though some Benoni structure is going to emerge here. As soon as black's going to take, we've got a kind of modern Benoni structure. Black wasn't in a rush to take here on d5. He actually plays knight a6 first. And that is actually quite genius, actually, I have to say. Peter Svidler, I've never seen him play a modern Benoni. I wondered, this curious question, how would he ever play a modern Benoni? It doesn't go there actually, and what he's done is actually provoking white to play d takes e6. This move d takes e6 is just weird. I don't think either player, they're in territory which is unknown to them, it seems. So if you wanted a modern Benoni, you know, I think it would be safe to castle. There's nothing major going on here, I would think, or is there? The problem is here that I think black's got b5 in this position, and if bishop f3, black again has got b5. So black, even this, has got a comfortable position somehow with this move order. Something's gone wrong here for white. If this really is the case, that white can't castle without that black being equal, something's gone wrong. If you want me to pinpoint something about this, okay, just while we're here, I need to know myself. Sorry, let me just know myself. White's delayed that e3 e4, so somehow white has slipped into a bad version of the Benoni. He can't castle without black getting a good version of Benoni, with pressure on d5 and a quick b5, because usually white's clamping down on b5. Alright, so this goes from bad to extremely bad to terrible. So d takes e6 is already great for black. He's not going to have that torture pawn on d6. In fact, the torture pawn, the standard torture pawn on d6 is not fixed. It's just immediately liberated and liquidated with d5. And many commentators have wondered how did white manage to get a worse position after 11 moves. This is a big mystery. This is not usually the case in Grandmaster games. Remember, this is just a 10-minute game with 5-second increments. So somehow white is just actually significantly worse here. There's no major structural target of attack like d6. Black has seemingly fully equalized in this position. I don't know if you guys agree. This is move 13. Is black better? That's the question. Would you say black's better? Something's gone wrong, I think, in the opening here. And it's just a disaster. Okay, what is, in fact, to have a constructive plan here, you know, the engine suggestion is actually e4. That might be a good one to sack a pawn. Try and play this. If that's the best, though, that's not that inspiring. You have to sack a pawn, but maybe that's the best way to play it. White didn't do that pawn sack. White played queen c2, and the queen is actually subject to harassment here. And tactically, black played knight b4. Beautiful idea, because now if queen takes c5, we have bishop f8, and the knight's going to be heading to c2. Knight c2, and oh look, we can win the rook. And this isn't a position you want with the white pieces, basically. So queen c2 was a bit questionable as well. Best was probably this pawn sacrifice. Okay, so queen c2, knight b4, the queen goes to b1, queen e7, and there might actually be stronger stuff, but this is good for black. Fantastic. Black's without, sorry, white is without much counterplay in this position. And in your own games, you should always strive for counterplay, whatever side you're at. And sometimes, sometimes when you play forcing moves, like in this game, how did white have this position without much counterplay? You can trace it back to certain inaccuracies. But maybe on move 10, you know, the forcing move d takes e6 left black without any structural issues and liberated his d pawn. He's got a huge amount of pressure. Basically, this is really bad news. So a4 is played. This is pathetic. This is like pathetic. Queen e6, and now black's just dominating the position in many different ways. Okay, so white is reduced to moves like this, rook a3, and then we have c4, which kind of marks out this d3 square. So you can imagine something like this coming in. And also we're looking at g2 here. So rook e1, rook ad8, and black's rooks are really beautiful. Look at the rooks. It's just beautiful for black. Probably, again, best might be this idea of trying to give up a pawn with e4. This might be the best shot, but that's miserable. Black doesn't even have to take this. Apparently you can play something like this, where you can do that on that pin. But it's a horrible position. White plays a5, and now the rook is attacked and goes to a4, and now we have knight e5. Actually, the idea now, things like queen c6 will hit a4 and g2 with that battery. So we have this move e4, at least stopping that threat, kind of. Bishop c6. And now, if white moves the rook back, well, say he moves here, let's imagine here, bishop b4 apparently is really pulverizing white totally. This move is pulverizing. So say here, rook d4. Okay, we're going to just double the rooks here, and I think things fall apart because we've got that pin. We're just going to double, we're going to treble on d2, and that's it. It's going to be nasty. If you want me to just show you an example, well, we can lose the rook if we move the knight. If we move here, bishop takes d2, bishop takes e4 is good. Bishop takes g2 is an example. That's that mating. It's horrible. Here, check. We'll be winning bishop and stuff. We'll just here. This position is disaster zone. Anyway, it's just really horrible. So the reason I wanted to mention that is it looks really weird anyway what white plays. He doesn't play rook a2, but it's a disaster zone. Here is no worse, is no better. We still run into this bishop b4, and the pressure is just going to be put onto the pin after that. So what white played just immediately kind of seems to lose material, because black plays in this position. White played this. Black plays what to win material? Black to play and win material. What's the move that black plays here? So what does black play in this position? Can you see? Any ideas? It is actually technically the best move in the position. Any ideas? We've got a delay here. Okay, I'm going to show you. All right. Yeah, we've got this pressure. Rook takes d2. Oh, so it's winning that rook. Now here, if rook takes c6, attacking the queen, black has rook takes e2, funny enough. Then if we win the queen, check. And this position is much better for black because we've got this massive pin here. We're going to be doing rook c6 soon, winning that bishop. Yeah, so this is all over, even though white's got the queen here. Black's got massive material advantage. Also there's bishop h6 if we want to get that bishop as well. So yeah, rook takes d2 wins material. There's no rook takes c6, so black is just a piece up. Yeah. Can he consolidate? Gets rid of that dangerous bishop. a6. Okay, we have knight b5. Getting out of the way. So here now, knight c7. The knight maybe is going to perch on e6, go onto this lovely dark square. Queen b6. We have f5, putting more pressure on the e file, breaking down to white's king on the diagonal. Rook d8. We have e takes, g takes. King f2, check, getting the queens off. Knight e6 protecting the rook. Then we have f4 check. Rook b4. Yeah, horrible. White does that, but black doesn't care. That tactic doesn't work. Black just takes here. Because if takes, there's knight d4 check. So white resigns here. So Sergey Karjakin was somehow, he didn't play this, he just resigned, but he was somehow massacred in this game, and it's fascinating to see how openings can be disastrous like that. So somehow it didn't even go into Benoni. It went into a much better position than any Benoni player could dream of, because that d pawn was liberated early and white was in an extremely passive position, planless in fact, so passive it was planless. Okay, so let's see. Alright, so 7.8's coming next, round 7.8. Round 7.8. Peter Svidler playing white against Sergey Karjakin. So, okay, in round 7.8. This is a 10-minute game with 5-second increments. So we have e4 from Peter Svidler. c5. So the time control now, because they drew the 10-minute games. This is 5 minutes each now with 3-second increments. Is that correct? Okay, is it 5 minutes each with 3-second increment? Yeah. So knight f3, d6. We have check, and this could be used to kind of sterilize things a bit sometimes. Bishop b5 check, knight d7. White plays d4. C takes, queen takes d4. So yeah, this variation, maybe it's kind of it's interesting actually. Just have a look on Livebook here for bishop b5 check just briefly. Yeah, d4 of course is the most common move, but bishop b5 is the second most popular actually. We're talking, you know, nearly 14,000 games compared to 94,000. So it's a worthy weapon of note to play like this. And it stops like the immediate fianchetto stuff. So a6, the bishop actually takes on d7. White sets up this Maroczy bind now. So this Maroczy bind is a bind on that d5 square. No, I'm pretty sure around 7.8 and 7.9 are the 5-minute games. Yeah. Are they not? Okay, so we got this Maroczy bind. So knight f6, knight c3, g6, and you know it seems pleasant enough for white so far. Queen d3. Okay, castles. a4, rook c8. I think white's already kind of created too many weaknesses with a4. It might be the case, just to check theoretically here, although it looks like, oh, you know, bind black against b5. Often bishop e3 is being played here. E.g., let's have a quick look at an example of bishop e3, letting black play b5 just to take there. This has been played before, and it's still okay for black though, this sort of position. I think black can get some play in any case. But anyway, this a4 might be a bit over enthusiastic to keep binds on things, because potentially these pawns are slightly vulnerable. We see rook c8, and obviously that's sensitive here. Bishop c6 is a very nifty move actually, vacating d7. So potentially this maneuver will put pressure not just on e4 but on a4 with the queen as a tempo gain. So a very nice maneuver, bishop c6, knight d7, and it just looks very, very natural as well. White stops knight c5 here radically with b4, but are these pawns slightly weak on the queen side? If he plays bishop e3, then still knight c5. It looks as though black's at least equal or better now with the bishop pair in this position. Didn't play this, but black looks fine here. But okay, so b4, knight b6 hits a4, and is encouraging white's pawns to go forward, and they can't go backwards, of course, so their committal targets, in particular now c4 all of a sudden is a big target. Well, if rook takes c4 is immediately threatened, so we have knight d2, but now bishop e6, and we've got 3 pieces now hitting c4. It looks very, very comfortable for black all of a sudden with 3 pieces hitting c4. Knight d5 shielding against the bishop, but now a4 drops, so black is a pawn up, and white has not too much compensation to show for that. Bishop a3. Is white actually threatening anything here? We have queen d7. The b6 square is of course covered. We have h3, rook fe8, rook b3, and now a5, stopping any b takes from white. And here it also means now that nice blockade, if taking here first, would be a nice blockade square for the knight. Queen c2, bishop h6, and now after bishop takes h6, yes, this is getting a lot of pressure. White moves that away. Bishop takes d5, e takes d5, knight b6 hitting c4, and also d5 because that pawn's pinned. So black is actually now getting a second pawn after knight takes d5, and it's still, there's no compensation here, except you might think there's a whiff of something on the diagonal, but not really. The bishop does go onto the diagonal, but now black just blocks it, doesn't mind about the double pawns. He just wants to stop any naughty stuff on the diagonal. He's 2 pawns up, and I think Peter Svidler is annoyed. He just takes here, and after queen takes e8, actually he's 2 pawns down. Maybe some of us would have played on if it's like a 5-minute game, but actually he resigns here. He's 2 pawns down. So yeah, it looks as though where did white go wrong? It's strange to think that a Maroczy bind at this time control can be quite risky actually on the queenside pawns. It demonstrated it was quite risky on the queenside pawns. So that was quite an interesting demonstration from black. Interesting. Okay, so what did you guys think of that? The queenside pawns were kind of vulnerable, so black's 2 pawns up here. Would you have resigned here? It's pretty miserable. So yeah, the 5-minute game, obviously it's a deterioration of game quality, but I think many of us do play like blitz chess on the internet, so it was interesting to see how you can fight against the Maroczy bind. Black didn't really seem to do too much except a bit of provocation, like Alekhine defense style on the queen side. So the white pawns on the queen side just crumbled really. So Peter Svidler had to sort of fight back on the 5-minute time control in the next game to keep himself in the match. Sorry, is there something about queen c3? Oh, that's a good point. Doesn't queen c3 double attack 2 pawns? Good question from one of you. Queen c3. Queen e4 apparently. Might be a good move, or a4. a4 actually hits the rook. If we go here, queen e2, so we're threatening this pawn. if we take, then check wins that rook. And if we take here, then take here. It's pretty hopeless there. If we take here, then check wins that. No, it doesn't win the rook. King goes here. Oh, bishop f4. The dark square bishop's quite dangerous here. Alright, good question though. Queen c3 in the final position. It does seem to be double attacking both pawns. But remember, he's also probably nearly running out of time as well. It's not just the position, it's the position on the clock as well. So there are two positions to take account of. So I think he was shorter on time as well. Okay, so we're going on to 7.9 next. So the second 5-minute game with 3-second increments. So in round 7.9, Sergey Karjakin sorry, did I say sorry, in round 7.8 yeah, I had Svidler as white losing, right? In 7.9, yeah, Sergey Karjakin playing against Peter Svidler in 7.9. Let's have a look at this. So e4, e5. I think the result might be, okay, let's just check it out. Knight f3, knight c6. We have Roy Le Paz territory. Standard stuff. Now we go into a Marshall Gambit, d5. So Peter Svidler playing the Marshall Gambit. E takes, knight takes. We have c6. It stands Marshall Gambit theory. Now d3 is very popular as well as d4. There's nearly 1,000 games with d4, but d3 is the second most popular choice. 276 games in my book. This is all pretty theoretical, very theoretical. Now Queen h4 and Bishop f5 appear to be the major options here. Nearly the same popularity. Bishop f5 was played. Rook e8, challenging the rook on, and that first rank is a bit vulnerable at the moment. We have rook takes, queen takes, threatening that back row. Knight d2, check. Bishop drops back finally. And here, first point out of book, the book move apparently is g3. Well, when I say book move, there's 15 games with g3, and apparently white's okay. For example, like this, white tends to be okay. Okay, but g3 wasn't played. In this position, Bishop c2 was played, and actually there's a fascinating resource with Bishop c2. It is kind of technically a loose piece, so it's kind of a weakness of the last move, and there's another loose piece here, but this is a kind of weakness of the last move if you consider it like that. So how would you pounce on this loose piece? Black to play here. There is an interesting resource. Black to play here. Have you got any fantastic ideas for black in this position? Anyone? Any fantastic ideas lurking here? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it seems okay. Anyone want to guess? Okay. Yeah, knight takes c3 is a fantastic idea, but let's just rule out this because you might want to try and win a pawn like this. This doesn't work in this position. white has rook b1 to kind of trap the queen. It's protected now. If queen here, bishop e3, and we actually win the queen. Queen's gone. In case you're wondering about winning the pawn, bishop takes h2. That's another forcing move to consider. It just doesn't work because of the quiet killer move. Rook b1. Yeah. Anything else, black's actually better here. Because black's going to escape, but rook b1's a killer move. Alright, so it's not bishop h2 yet, but there's this amazing knight takes c3 lurking behind the scenes. Takes, hitting a1 and c2. And there's bishop g5, which does something useful actually, because analysts are quoting this move h6, and I wasn't quite sure of the function of it. But say black just took on, let's imagine black just takes on a1 here, queen takes c6. It's complicated. Because we're on this, we can't protect. So in this position, after bishop g5, it's actually important, it seems, not to take the rook, well, because then that drops. And if we take it here, then there's rook c1, and this position is not so clear either. It's a small advantage for black, but it seems technically best, if we're going to go this route, we need h6 for some reason to leave 3 pieces hanging. I was wondering about this. Three pieces are hanging here. And if the bishop drops back, then we take here more safely, because this position, this, it's strange stuff. This is engine stuff, but with the bishop knocked out of c1, it rebounds now because we can use c1. That bishop's been knocked out of c1. I think this might be a technical point which behind h6. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. You might have seen other analysts on this, but it seems in this position, for black to follow up correctly, it needs h6 here. This is getting into dangerous territory to just take here. If we take here, then that's not even an advantage for black. It's not even an advantage. If we take here, it's barely an advantage. Yeah, this is barely an advantage for black. So it seems if you want to follow this continuation, you play h6 here. Yeah. So I don't know if people following on their engines thought, oh, knight takes c3. Oh, what an easy tactic to miss. No, it's actually the follow-up. It's incredible stuff, but this is an engine move. This isn't just a simple thing, because it bounces back in black's face, a lot of this stuff. When you take on c3, your position's been destroyed as well on the queen side. So anyway, so after bishop c2, yeah, funny enough, black played a quieter move, b4, which seems logical to try and undermine the pawn chain. I mean, there's pressure on c3 anyway. We have c4, b3. What on earth is going on here? Okay, if white, let's have a look at this. If white takes on b3 here, then that allows knight b4, which is nice for black because he's on that d3 and he's got bishop c5 coming up, which is on f2 as well. So white actually played a nice move here. If a takes the same sort of thing, knight b4, and this is just horrible. Say this is just really horrible. You lose the bishop, and in this position, well, it's just horrible. We just take here, protecting the queen, and That's horrible. Okay, so this is great stuff, this b3, but white plays the correct move response, bishop d1, with the idea that, well, bishop d1, with the idea now that the rook's shielded, yeah, so there's no pin on the c1 bishop. So knight b4, white is ready to answer it now, moving this bishop with bishop d2. And white's fine after this. White's doing well here at this point at move 21, tactically. Queen e5, bishop c3. Now taking off that pesky knight with bishop takes b4. So white's doing very well. He's actually could have just taken on c6 here. It's fantastic to double attack. And also like take here later. So this would be very nice. Well, this position. Yeah, white actually, that's good as well. Bishop takes b3. So black does seem to be in a bad state at this point. Rook e1, that seems very logical. Bishop c5, yes, some tactics on f2, you'd think. One day, bishop a4. We have rook d8, so pressure on d3. That's defended. Actually, there might have been better here, but anyway, that's defended. Queen takes b2. Now, white took on c6 with the bishop, and this amazing looking deflection tactic is played by Peter Svidler in the form of bishop h5, trying to deflect the queen away from f2 to deliver a mate on g1. It seems like skewing the rook as well, so it seems ingenious. So let's get the basics out of the way here. If queen takes, yes, as mentioned, queen takes f2, queen g1 checkmate. But there is a refutation move here, g4 it seems, which gives the king g2. So this stuff doesn't work. If bishop takes, we can actually take here, and we're protecting g1. So black would be material down in this position. He can try another deflection on f1, but after rook b1, looking at black's back row, black is material down here without too much compensation. So the bishop h5 is brilliant looking, but it might not. It might be refutable, it seems, with g4. This wasn't played though. g4 wasn't played. So we get a series of very interesting moves now. We get rook b1. Okay, so rook b1, which, yeah, is a little bit. It's not the greatest move technically. If white could find, if black could find a good move here, black to play here. What would you play with black if you had 6 million years to analyze this position? What would you play in this position? So black to play here, but remember this is a 5-minute game, so you know, 5-minute game. Black to play here. Any ideas? What would you play? What do you think is a good move in this position? I don't know if you've also seen the game, but no, game continuation is really interesting. But if you were playing black here, what you might consider? Yeah, the simplest black has is bishop takes f3, because funny enough the bishop's hanging here, so after takes, black is actually a piece up. You see black's a piece up, and it's also the bishop pair as well. They complement each other's weaknesses quite well. So this position is totally gone, it seems. It didn't happen though. Black didn't take on f3. That's crazy, isn't it? But it's all the pressure, it's all the time pressure and everything. You might be tempted with other moves as well. Bishop takes f2. That is a reasonable move, actually. This is reasonable. But the most crushing is simply bishop takes f3. What was played was actually queen takes b1. And this is actually still quite good. Black still is doing well here on queen takes b1 technically, but it wasn't as clear. It's not as clear cut because unfortunately, okay, Black now plays what seems to be a crushing blow, and maybe this is what attracted him to this continuation. Bishop takes f2. Now, if the king goes here, we just take on f1, right? So the king is forced to sort of take on f2. But then that runs into this check and Black's the exchange up. Before carrying on there, that is the game continuation. It seems technically stronger, just queen b6 to keep the dark square bishop basically might have been a bit wiser, because here we maintain that dark square bishop and this position might actually be easier to play for Black because we've got a nice blockade on the pawns. We're going to play something like this and threaten all sorts of stuff soon. So if you imagine this position as an example, this is actually maybe a bit easier for Black to play with the dark square bishop. But in this particular way that it was played, okay, because that is a double attack. In the way that it was played here, we lose the dark square bishop. It departs the theatre. The dark square bishop departs, and although Black is technically doing great, I would say, you know, the knight has got some nice squares from the pawns in a blitz game, especially the knight on d5. It doesn't look, to me, I've played blitz chess a bit, as you know, it doesn't look trivial to win this. Does it look trivial to win this position for Black in a blitz game? Does this look trivial? Does this look like a trivial win for Black in blitz? No, I want you to be honest, or if you've played blitz, because that knight seems tricky knights in blitz, and it's got some squares, yeah. I meant to say trivial, by the way, trivial. I don't think particularly it's trivial at all. But technically, Black can put pressure on White with, if you're a computer, you put pressure on White with check here and queen a3. It puts pressure on the pawns and wins a pawn, but still, you know, that knight's on d5. You know, maybe White's going to drum up something, you know, in a blitz game. But anyway, you know, try and drum up something on the king. But Black played queen d6, so he wasn't taking that pawn, and we have g3, h6, queen e2, and already, you know, White could play d4 now and cover this diagonal soon. Rook b8, we have king g2, king h8, h4. The evaluation shift is actually only just above a pawn now. Queen a3, king gets out of trouble on the second rank. Queen c1, knight f4, and now after knight f4, that tricky knight is threatening to coordinate with the queen on the king. The queen makes sure there's no queen e5 at least. Well, the queen goes to e7 on f7 now. Queen b7 protecting f7. Queen e5 now threatening that horrible thing that Black wanted to avoid. Well, things like this are not pleasant. But also, even these pawns can start advancing. Black threw in this check, and he's created a loose piece here, and unfortunately forgets about the loose piece. Black should play something like rook e8, but maybe he's also slightly concerned about knight h5, I would imagine. He plays king g8, right? Dropping the rook. Just out of theoretical interest though, on knight h5, did black have something here? F6, but then we still win the rook. Yeah. So this was getting tricky, I thought, with the knight and the queen, to be honest. But so basically, to defend this, this position, instead of blundering the rook, okay, if we were trying to defend this, we'd probably hit the queen, yeah. And it's not over. I mean, you know, if you've only got like 10 seconds or something to win the game, it's not over compared to the easier continuations earlier. The bishop takes f3-1 or preserving the dark square bishop 1 were much easier than this position. You know, with h5, I mean, how do we quickly win this with black? I don't see it. If Peter Svidler's in time pressure, how do we win this with black? I don't know. There's nothing that concrete, is there? Because the knight's actually covering e2. These pawns are restrained. I don't know. It's a difficult one, isn't it? But anyway, black cracked up. He just blundered the whole rook here. Okay, so that was 7.9, and what I don't understand, sorry, I might have confused something. Oh, maybe it was a match of 4 30-minute games or something. Let's look at the last 4 results to see what's going on here. So, was it a match of 4 30-minute games instead of a match of 2 30-minute games? In round 7.5, Karjakin won. In round 7.6, Peter Svidler won, so it's 1-1. Round 7.7, Peter Svidler won again. 7.8, Peter Svidler lost. So 7.9. Right, so 7.10, could Peter Svidler, so 7.10, no, has to sort of win this, right? In 7.10. So this last game, 7.10. I might have something wrong with the logic of the time controls. So is this I assume this is a 5-minute game, is it? Can someone just correct me? Is this a 5-minute game, round 7.10 with 3-second increments? I'm going to assume it is. Okay. So e4 from Peter Svidler, and we have a Coco piano with bishop c5. Coco piano. Nice. c3, knight f6, d3. Quiet one, even quieter. Knight bd2, castles h3, and knight e7. Nice little maneuver to put the knights here quite aggressively, pointing at f4. This knight over here on g6. Bishop b3, a6, creating a nice pigeonhole for the bishop. Bishop goes back immediately. Knight f1, bishop e6. White breaks in the center with d4. Okay, apparently, okay, there's some agreement it might be a 5-minute game, by the way. Okay, that's good to know. Bishop takes b3, queen takes b3, and Sergey Karjakin plays queen c8. We have knight g3, rook e8, bishop g5. The knight sidesteps away from damaged pawn structure. Very aggressive knight on f5 though, now, very nice. Knight df8, and white's actually significantly better here, it seems. Somehow black's gone slightly wrong somewhere. We have h4, and this is threatening that knight, which seemed like a good idea to put on g6 earlier, because now after h6, although it might be tempting to sacrifice a piece on h6, very tempting in a 5-minute game, there's a much stronger move that was played. If we do sacrifice a piece, I'm not sure it actually does too much. Yeah, black's just got queen g4 with stuff coming at white's king soon. So there's no point sacking a piece, but you might think for 3 pawns with bishop takes h6. Let's have a quick look at this. For 3 pawns, does it actually... Here there's king takes h6, so if we take here we get 3 pawns, and this might be technically palatable for white, but black also has some chances here. It seems technically this might get a bit tricky. Yeah, it goes a bit wild, the game. This is a technical analysis. It goes a bit wild, but there's a temptation there to win 3 pawns for the piece, which I thought is worthy of note after h6. So Sergey Karjakin saying, look, you know, go for this, but instead there's a really powerful move played instead at move 18. So white's play here avoids the temptation of any sack. What would you play here with white, which surprised me a little bit, but is a really good move? So white's play here. So Peter Svidler is playing white. Any ideas? White's play. Any ideas? Okay, fantastic. h5. That is a really good move, it seems. Now, the problem is, okay, if the knight steps back, well, there we can't, because knight takes e7, right? And if the knight goes to a miserable place, well, knight e7 check is kind of winning the exchange. Yeah? Or here. This one is not good either. Not because of this, because black can take and queen g4, and apparently this is okay for black, but actually in this position after knight f4 white has stronger in taking. This position here is miserable for black. That pawn's just weak. I think step back here and munch this pawn soon with queen d2. Pawn's just weak. So okay, so basically after h5 black played h takes g5, and we have h takes g6 threatening takes and win the rook, or queen f7 mate in 2, more to the point. Knight takes g6 to avoid that mate in 2. Knight takes g5, so we're threatening queen takes f7. That's defended. Now here there's a really crushing move in the position, fairly crushing here, that wasn't played. White in the game played g3, which loses some of the attacking advantage, unfortunately. What would you play here with white? White's play is a great attacking move available, so hence it's not g3. If that g3 sort of takes the effect out of the proposed attacking crushing move, what would you play? You're an attacking player, so with white, any fantastic ideas in this position? Anyone? Any amazing attacking idea? Actually there's 2 which are very good. Okay, there's points with both. You can either try and swing a rook in, and there's also give yourself points for, you know, rook e3, or we can swing the queen over here, but both seem very dangerous. So rook e3 as an example, takes rook h3, threatening rook h7. Queen takes b7. This position is just great for white. Yeah, that's really dangerous with the idea of rook h7. That would cause a panic. This threat here, but also apparently it seems queen d1 causes a major panic as well. Well, it would have to cause a major concession, shall we say, not a panic. Take the emotions out of it. It just causes a major concession because basically queen g4 as well threatens knight h6. I think queen g4 might be more to the point. So let's give an example. E takes, we should play queen g4, threatening knight h6 check, winning the queen. So black does this. Is there a killer blow here? It's just better for white, this position. Black's really limited prospects. White's got a nice centre, and there's a lot of pressure here. Just follow this through. This is a pleasant position for white. Okay, so anyway, okay, not checkmate continuations, but both are like attractive, very attractive in this position. Queen d1 or rook e3. Okay, it's not a forced checkmate, but g3's got some logic to it as well, you know, to get the king here and put the rook here, so it's not without logic. And black still actually is struggling after g3, so that's quite a nice move. Yeah. D5 though, we have queen takes d5, queen takes, e takes, and black still is looking in trouble here, but the queens are off. We have king g2, which might not be the most accurate move in this position, but remember it's a 5-minute game. I'm not sure how much it's worth analysing deeply, but basically, okay, white's still got a small advantage, and possibly in this position with the knight protecting d4, this is the time where c4, kicking the rook back for d5, seems to still give white a nice advantage, but that wasn't played. Instead we see the move f4, and we have f6, knight e4, the rook goes back there, f takes, yeah, d5, very interesting move, d5, tactically, very interesting move. It's trying to set up a very nice looking tactic in theory. After rook takes d5, we have a very nice interesting looking tactic, knight h6 check, trying to fork here the king and d5. This is sidestepped, so it doesn't take this, sidestepped, because this is good for white, of course. It's sidestepped cleverly with king f8, which seems to be going into a disaster zone of this f file after the check. Now black again sidesteps disaster, doesn't play this, because if he does play this, yes, we throw in the check, and then wherever the king goes, I think we just take on g7, and white is significantly better here. So black does a counter sacrifice now with knight f4 check, knight f4, and this is very nice now resource in the circumstance, because we can take this knight next. So after black takes that knight, black is a pawn up with that nice bishop on that diagonal, but you could argue, isn't this knight quite nice? It's shielded from frontal attack with f5, and you could argue, well, it's a pass pawn as well, so it's not all one-way traffic. King f7, rook ad1, we have check, and now c6. Now black is probably going to make progress with rook Gd8 without having to worry about any knight G5. That pawn's useful there, and try and take this D file. So white nudges that rook D4, and here it seems maybe white should be, well, after rook D4, white should be nearly just equal with C5. In fact, it seems as though this position should be fairly okay, because yeah, we have got this beautiful blockading knight on E4, but what happened in the game was handing black maybe a little trump card. Instead of C5, rook takes D4, which gives black this D pawn. Not only that, the pass pawn, it's the frontal attack on the knights are possible now. So we've got this D pawn and the frontal attack on the knight possible. But maybe white thought he could blockade that pawn. He plays rook H1, rook H8, rook G1, with the threat of knight D6 check now. Yeah, that could do some damage. We have rook D8, and the thing is, Peter Svidler can't afford to draw this, right? So he can't just play rook H1 and draw it, because then he'll lose the match. Because I think actually he has to win this game. So a draw is a loss, basically. So I think so. He plays F6, going for it. You know, rook G7 seems very attractive to try and go for it with this passed pawn. King E6. After rook G7, rook D7, rook G8, and this pawn is now running with D3. The blockades is non-existent at the moment. Well, it's not particularly hot because the king's also on F6. White plays check here, rook H8, and yeah, black's in a great position here. He plays actually this, rook takes H6, D2. We have F7 check. And now if black plays king takes F7, then white will actually be better with check. And here, if king E8, knight F6 check, and we're collecting that rook and stopping the pawn, and if king E6, we can actually play knight G5 check. And this is winning as well, king D6. There's a winning move in this position, and it's not rook takes D7. Can you see a winning move in this position? White's playing win. This is a variation. There's a winning move in this position. This is just a variation of the game. If this happened, how does white win? Any ideas? Okay, okay, now if you said knight, okay, there's a winning move. It's not knight E4 check. Here takes this position is kind of equalish. No, actually there's a resource here in C5 check apparently. So if takes here, then we just take the rook. Yeah, and if the bishop takes, then we play this check. And so if here, then we take here, we take that with check, and say here, then we play king e2, we're knight up, and say here we play the check, and we play takes. So yeah, so this whole line is sidestepped very cleverly. This final trick. So instead of king takes f7, I think there was about 10 seconds, leaving about less than 15 seconds. So Sergey Karjakin showing nerves of steel in this position. He doesn't take on f7. Fantastic in the circumstances. He plays actually king e7, and in this position, without that trick, black is threatening to queen. And what does white do here? White's busted. Peter Svidler didn't even test this, he just resigned in this position. We can try a few things out if you want, but basically with Peter Svidler resigning, congratulations are then due to Sergey Karjakin for winning the World Cup 2015. But that was a cool as a cucumber move, king e7. Otherwise we could have seen an Armageddon game. Yeah, it seems that king takes f7 is better for white in all variations if played correctly. So king e8, there's knight f6, king e6, we have this knight g5, and this amazing move c5 wins here. Yeah, yeah, this is actually a mate in 3 here, by the way. We don't take here, that's better for black. No, there's actually a mate in 3 in this one. Check is a mate in 3 on the back row. Ouch. Yeah, so that was a very nice devious trap. if that was allowed, king takes f7. It seems all the variations lead to Rome here with best play. Amazing stuff actually. So king e8, knight f6. Yeah, what does black play? King e8. The choices. So king e6 or king e6. Check. So we play it in this position, c5 check. That wins. So even in king c7 we have a mate. Check. If here, still mating. Bishop stopping the king. Alright, so in the game continuation, okay, king e7 just wins because, okay, now let's try some tricks. If we play this, let's have a look at this. So we want to try and queen. Unfortunately, black queens with check. Yeah, that doesn't help. And we can just actually we got a forced mate. We can just take this. Yeah, black's queening with check. That's one problem. And he just, if he takes, okay, if we just take this, just take, the king's holding the pawn. There's nothing to do here. It's all over. Alright, yeah. So yeah, final little trick from Peter Svidler. So both amazingly resourceful players, but it was just calmly refuted with king e7. So I think there was absolutely brilliant play, even in these blitz and rapid, to be honest. Absolutely brilliant stuff going on for the time controls. If you put it relative to time controls, I think it was pretty brilliant stuff in that context, to be fair. Okay, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this week, got something from it. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube. Yeah, and see you next week. 9:05 usually, because of this fantastic thing on TV I want to watch. Hobby City, is it? So yeah, see you next week. Yeah, so 9:05 next week. Yeah, is the usual time. Even though I might say 9 o'clock. Start aggregating at 9 o'clock if you want. Okay, thanks. See you next week.